So, good day, class. Um, Today, I just want to give you a slight presentation on what we did cover during the vacation class, the activity, especially on regression. And I will bring you another video where we're going to talk more on interpreting linear uh, um, regression estimation. We'll talk more about that. But first and foremost, let us look at calculating regression analysis. Remember, this we are doing this for managerial economics. We are trying to predict or forecast, so to say, how we're trying to forecast how we can look at the data that we have, current data that we have, and how we can use it to forecast into the future if we change our price and how it's going to affect quantity demand. Now, how do you go about this? Now, you're presented with an example like this, where you have an activity of showing you data on quantity and price for different cities. So the question states that consider a small restaurant chain specializing in Chinese diners. The business has collected information on prices and the average number of meals served per day for a random sample of 8 restaurants in the chain. These data are shown below. Use a regression analysis to estimate the coefficient of the demand function. Quantity demand equals to A minus BP. Okay? And B, predict the meals per day if the price is set at $120. And based on the estimated equation, calculate the arc elasticity of demand at the mean values of the variable. Sorry, my uh, picture might be blocking that, but you should have this question as well. And if you remember, for those of you that were in class, and even if you were not in class, you can turn up to slide number 8, where you're going to learn more about linear demand, and also look at slide number 11 to learn about uh, the properties of the linear regression coefficient. Here you can learn about what the QD stands for, the quantity demand. A stands for the intercept, when we assume that all other coefficients is 0. And B is regarded as the slope. P stands for the price. Now don't forget, the negative sign here is just indicating that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demand. This will come in handy when we are doing the calculation, especially when we are trying to calculate the intercept. So there are two things you want to calculate here. First, you want to calculate the slope of the equation of the demand function, the linear demand function. And once you get the slope, that is only when you can get the intercept. And then you will be able to answer question A. Question B, on the other hand, just because you're able to get A and B, you just need to plug in the 120, that is the price, and then you're going to get the quantity demanded, that is the meals per day, if the price is set at 120. Now, using arc method or arc elastic to conduct elasticity of demand, it simply means we are using the midpoint method, or sometimes we are using the point method to calculate elasticity of demand. I will take you through how to do that, but first and foremost, let us see how we are going to solve this regression problem. So what I've done is that I already solved it, but I will take you step by step on how I calculated it. Okay, first, let's look at the solution. So we have a formula here. Remember, I said to calculate the slope, which is the B, I said we have to first calculate the slope, which is the B, and then we calculate the intercept. So that is why I put it in this order. So to calculate the slope, it is simply the summation of the price minus the average price. You see this P, and then it has a bar on top of it. It's called average price. Or you can call it the mean price in bracket, multiplied by the quantity demanded minus, again, the average quantity demanded, divided by the summation of the price minus the average price squared. I will show you again how you're going to go through all this step by step so that you don't make a mistake. And once we've calculated the b, that is the slope, we can substitute it into the equation to calculate our intercept, the a. Now, all we need again is the information that was already provided when we're calculating the slope. For calculating the intercept, we need the average quantity demanded, and we also need the average of the price. Multiply by the slope which we already calculated. And don't forget there is a negative sign here. Very, very important. Let's see how we're going to calculate it. Now, take the next step. To calculate the mean quantity, if we go back to the previous slide, we can see that what we did is that we sum up all the quantity on the column and we divide it by the total number. It's a simple method of calculating the mean. Summation x over n. That is 800 divided by 8. I will tell you how we got the 800. Now let's go back quickly to see the previous slide, how we calculated the mean. Sorry, I will show you in the next slide. Apologies, but let's proceed. The price, on the other hand, the average mean is the summation of all the price in the second column divided by n, the total number, which is 160. Let's take a look at how that was done. So take a look at this column. So if you sum up all this value in quantity, you're going to get 800. I didn't put the 800 here because it's not so required in the table. But that is how we got the 800 in the previous slide. And we divide it by the total number of city. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because the last number here is 8. It could be in alphabet. We could name the city. It doesn't matter so long as we know that there are up to 8 variables here. We divide the quantity by 8. That is how we get the average, the Q bar that I mentioned in the previous slide. And for the price bar, all we need to do is to sum up all these values of the price. And when we sum them up, we divide it by 8. And then again, we get the value of the average of the price. Now, the next step requires us to do a very simple mathematics. And so let's just be on the safe side here. So remember, average quantity, Q bar, is equal to 800 divided by 8, and that is how we got 100. Price, let us just quickly be sure about it. It is 150. I'm just doing that with you so you'll be on the safe side, plus 180. So you can go on with me, plus 190, plus 140, plus 130, plus 190, plus 160, plus 140. When you sum that up, it's 1,280, and you divide again by 8, and what do you get? Divided by 8, and then we get 160. Now remember, Q bar, it's 100 plus 90 plus 85, 110, 120, 90, 105, 100. It gives us 800 divided by 8, we got 100. So now that we've established how we got 800 and how we got 1,280, and we divided it by 8 to get 160 for the price and 100 for the quantity. We call this the average price of quantity, which is 100. Average price of which is 160. Now this is very integral in the next phase. You see the next column is P minus P bar. So you look at the price. The first price here is 150. What is our P bar? Remember, it is the average mark, average score, and our P bar is 160. So 150 minus 160, that is how we got negative 10. 180 minus 160, we got 20. 190 minus 160, we got 30. You continue that until you get to the end. 140, you only start with the price, minus the average, which is 160. 140 minus 160 is negative 20. Now let's look at the quantity. We use the same analogy for the quantity. The first quantity is 100. Remember, our average quantity is 100. So 100 minus 100, obviously it's 0. 90 minus 100 is negative 10. 85 minus 100 is negative 15. You continue until you get to the end. Again, 100 minus 100 is 0. Now, remember, in our formula for calculating the um, the slope, the b, uh, we have the denominator summation p minus p bar square. So meaning whatever we've gotten in the fourth column, p minus p bar, we need to square them. So negative 10 multiplied by negative 10 will give you 100. 20 multiplied by 20 will give you 400. Or you can just press it on your calculator. 30 square is equal to 900. Negative square is equal to 400. Please remember to ignore the negative sign when you are squaring it. In fact, if you have to do it in your calculator, don't forget to put it in a bracket or parentheses so that the calculator can understand that there is a negative sign when you're squaring it. It will give you 400. If you square 30, it's going to give you 900. And if you continue that, you sum them up, you're going to get 4,000. So the price minus the average all squared is equal to 4,000 if you sum all of this up. The next column, simply multiply P minus P bar multiplied by Q minus Q bar. You can do it interchangeably. You can have Q minus Q bar first or P minus P. It doesn't matter so long as you are multiplying. So in this last column, it is the numerator of our slope. The numerator of our slope is showing us the P minus P, summation of P minus P bar multiplied by Q minus Q bar. That is this column multiplied by this column. So take everything one after the other. Negative 10 multiplied by 0, it's 0. 20 multiplied by negative 10 is negative 200. Positive and negative will give you a negative sign. So what I usually advise is that when you're doing this on your calculator, always remember when you have a negative sign multiplying the positive, the final answer will be negative. So all you need to do is to press it on your calculator straight away. You don't need to put a negative sign, but at the final answer, make sure you don't forget. So 30 multiplied by 15 is negative 450. But remember, if you think you're going to struggle with that, you can always put a negative sign. But don't forget to put it in a bracket when you multiply it by any other value. So when you continue multiplying this column by this column, you're going to get all this value on the last column. And when we sum them up, that is, they're all negatives except for the zeros, you're going to get a negative 1,750. So on our slope, which we are calculating, which is the b, it is these divided by this last column divided by the next to the last column. Now let's see how that is going to look out in the next slide. So substituting into the slope for the b, like I said, we have negative 1,750 divided by 4,000, and we get a negative answer, obviously 0.4375. Now I told you we need to calculate the slope before we calculate the intercept. So if we want to calculate the intercept, don't forget the intercept is simply A, and then you have the quantity demanded, average quantity demanded, minus the slope multiplied by the price average of the price. You remember we did the 800 divided by 8 and then we got 100, and 1208 divided by 8 and we got the 160. Here they are here for the quantity demand and here for the price. The slope is the negative 0.4375, which is here. Don't forget it's a negative sign. Okay, and then the intercept is A minus that. So when you do this mathematically, but before you do that, you have to follow the rule of BODMAS. So you multiply this by 160. And when you do that, that is 0. So you start by doing 0.4375 multiplied by 160 is 70. But I'm very sure that there is a negative sign before 70, right? So it's negative 70. Now, negative multiplied by negative, this negative here, it's going to be a positive. Minus multiplied by minus will give you a positive value. So it becomes a positive 70. So 100 plus 70, that is how we got 170. Please don't forget the negative sign. It always multiplies another negative and becomes positive. So, but we always have to start from this, multiplied by this. Then we figure out the sign, which becomes a positive sign because negative and negative becomes positive when they multiply each other. So now that we figure out what our A is, our intercept, we can put it in our regression line. Remember, our regression line says it's quantity demanded. If you go back to your note, it's quantity demanded equals to the A, that is your intercept, minus, not this minus, but in the formula, minus your slope multiplied by the price. Now, question B says we should substitute. Now, this is the regression line for answer for question A. So we are done here. Now, question B says if the price is 120, then what is the quantity demanded? That is how many meals per day will be ordered. All we need to do again is to substitute 120. You see where the P is? We place 120 there, and we'll multiply that by 0.4375, and 170 minus that answer, which is 52.5, will give you 117.5. Don't forget, we multiply this by this first. That's how we got 52.5. 170 minus it, we get 117.5. So what this implies is that if our price changes to $120 per day, it means that the quantity demand will be 117.5. So you can approximate that 118 meals per day will be demanded if our price was 120. Now let's move on to the next slide. Question C. Now, question C says using arc elasticity of demand to estimate the elasticity. How do we use arc elasticity of demand? Now, if you remember in the previous classes, we've covered how to do elasticity of demand. But one thing that is very integral here is that when we are doing regression analysis, I will just keep it simple by saying that this B, the slope, represents our it is used to multiply to calculate our elasticity of demand, in this case, the slope, because we can find the changes in price and divided by the changes in quantity demanded. It is already represented by the slope. So we have a new formula here other than the normal formula we have when we are doing elasticity of demand, where you're only given numbers, two different points in time of changes in quantity and changes in price. That is different. But this time around, we are not following the pattern of Q before the P, right? If you remember in the class. But this time, we're having P, the average price. Remember, our average price, what was it? It was 160 divided by our average quantity. And what is our average quantity? 100 multiplied by the slope. If we do this, we are sure to get the answer for our elasticity of demand. So let's see, when we substitute that into the equation, what do we get? 160 divided by 100. Don't forget, the slope is a negative sign. When you plug it in, I see I put it in a bracket. When you do all this, you get negative 0.70. The negative sign again is just an indication that there is an inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. But when you are supposed to interpret the result, we interpret by looking at the absolute value. When I say absolute value, we ignore the sign. It's not negative, it's not positive. We just want to interpret. So this question is about, first and foremost, you might want to answer, is it elastic or inelastic? I didn't indicate it here, but you should know by now that because 0.70 is less than 1, our elasticity is inelastic. And what the interpretation simply means is that a percent increase in price will lead to 70% decrease in quantity demanded because of this negative sign. So I hope you do understand this. In the next slide, next video, I'm going to talk to you more about interpreting um, uh, linear regression results. Thank you.